Hey, so today and in January, we're talking about the impact of trauma on play. You might find yourself saying, why can't I play? Or why is play hard? Or why do I have a hard time having fun? This may not be you, but if it is, I hope that you will come to chat on January 24th, on Tuesday, January 24th from 7:30 to 9, and we will talk about it. And today I'm going to talk about that some more and just give you some things to think about, and especially if you can't attend chat. So, a couple other events, a couple other announcements though. We will be having group starts on February 7th, every other week for February and March. So, the 7th and the 21st, they actually fall on the same dates, Tuesdays in every other week in February and March. So that's the February 7th and 21st and March 7th and 21st. So we have 4 slots left and welcome you to join that. The other thing we have is study hall on January 31st. If you haven't come to one of those, we do our healing homework and we just kind of do that together. And if you have questions about that, let me know. And so that's study hall. And I just want to say for 2023, first of all, thank you for all of those who have been on the beginning of this journey since, 2021, beginning of 2021. And I appreciate your patience. We're heading into 2023. And if you haven't figured it out, I'm pretty dedicated to this. But there's always kinks to work out and things to figure out, and trying to reach people in the right ways and in the best ways has led to it taking some time. Plus, this is a side thing I'm doing in a way. So I am certainly dedicated to this and hope that the groups themselves, but also the group events, the conversations, the discussions, and other events that we do will help again to support you. For those who are just starting out, for those who've been at this a while, for those who would like a supportive community in addition to therapy, and an online platform. So I just appreciate you and wanted to share a couple things that are coming up in the new year. And more specifically, I want to do at some point in the next few months a time of reviewing a movie or a show and talk about some of the aspects that came up in that particular show. So if you have some suggestions of what you'd like to talk about with some other people who are watching it maybe from a similar view, similar experience, let me know some suggestions of what you'd like to look at. Also, we are expanding to California, if you haven't heard that yet. We're expanding, so we'll have folks on the East Coast in Atlanta and Georgia, and we'll have folks on the West Coast, San Diego, and throughout California. We have been developing kind of the female side of the female community, and we will be expanding to the masculine community for men and for those who identify as non-binary and trans on that side. And so that's what's going to be coming up. So questions are welcome with that. But let's get into this. So let's talk about play, fun, fantasy. Why are these things affected so much by trauma? And the short answer is that trauma sends our alert system into high gear. And that connection is kind of the main one, is that we are on high alert, which means we tend to replace the natural inclination to be laughing and enjoying ourselves. We tend to replace that with energy focused on finding safety. And if you think about it, safety and play, they don't really interact. You need safety. Usually it's kind of I think about it kind of like there's a label on play that says safety required. And so if you're not feeling safe, it's kind of hard to be silly or to giggle or to find something funny. I mean, think about it. Trauma is a very serious, kind of locks us down kind of a place. And if we have PTSD, CPTSD, we have the triggers and flashbacks and all of that, those and grief, my goodness, the grief that comes with sexual trauma and trauma in general, it's heavy. It's serious. It's kind of like when you're feeling stressed and serious and someone tries to joke with you, most of the time it's not funny. I don't know about you, and that doesn't necessarily fit for everyone, but it's not funny. It doesn't land the same as when you're relaxed. And you know me, or if you know me, you know I talk in SUDS language, that 0 to 10 scale. 0 being Zen, 10 being can't handle anything anymore. And as we go up that scale, fun and play sort of disappear because the higher you get on the scale, the more in survival mode we go. And so those things get replaced. So seriousness tends to replace that. Looking for safety tends to replace just having general fun. So what else goes into that? I do have a few notes here, so let me check in and see where I'm at with that. So safety, trauma, and play don't speak the same language. Trauma impacts our alert system. Our alert system is turned on all the time and often stays on, so that makes it difficult. And sometimes, okay, so what do we replace play with? Or what does trauma tend to replace play with? We tend to overwork or spend a lot of time doing things. We tend to live up here. Sometimes we feel like our body betrayed us, and so we go to our mind, we go to the thinking place. And can that be helpful? Sure. But if we lose our connection with our body, sometimes we stay stressed because we're not attending to our body cues. We may not know when our breath has gone shallow and we aren't utilizing all of our senses, maybe. So fantasy is a part of fun, I would say. I know I've struggled with fantasy most of my life. Someone would say, envision this, or don't you have kind of a fantasy world and kind of disappear and have a good time in that fantasy world? And I would say, I don't know, what are you talking about? I don't know. That's not really where my mind goes. And but at the same time, if you think about anxiety and worry, sometimes I call, or all the time, I call worry negative fantasizing. So, in this lens, thinking about play, we might say that trauma replaces fantasy with worry. Again, back to the safety thing, trying to find safety. So that might be kind of thinking about what am I spending my time doing more often? And in trauma land, that's what we're spending a lot of time doing. So a question came up for me as I was thinking through this, and it has to do with, personality. How do you tell when you're just more of a serious person? Maybe you're more academic. Maybe you're more of a sciencey, figure things out person. Maybe, dancing around the room or going to an amusement park or doing things that, I mean, that's just an example, but there's so many things that fall in kind of the fun, silly, playing around kind of a space. And if your personality is not in that direction, How do you tell whether it's trauma or whether it's your personality? So I think I tend to be a little bit more of a serious person. I'm very detail oriented. I like to plan things. I like to analyze things. But I think a distinction with trauma is, do you have your type of things that are fun? Do you have your list? Your list may be very different than someone else's list, but do you have those things that are just enjoyable, that you find yourself smiling or laughing about or with? Now, that could be alone. You may just be alone because that's where you feel safest. It may be the complete opposite. So that's a question that came up. So how do you tell? And that would be my answer. I'm not positive about that, and I'm certainly welcome, and that's one of the reasons why I want to have a chat about it, a discussion about it, is because I want to hear, your take on that. But I think that's a good distinction, is, do you have things that are really enjoyable that you look forward to doing? Do you have that list? So the antidote. I do think that play is a good antidote to trauma. And what do I mean by that? So I think that play can be used as a tool when we're starting to move up that scale and get more and more stressed. As a side note, I think we've all been in the situation where we've been in a tense moment with someone, maybe a partner, maybe a best friend, or a coworker, and you're aggravated, and the communication's not right, and you're just kind of going at it, and something funny will hit, and it just cuts it all away, and you just find yourself laughing about whatever the thing is. And immediately your stress level comes down. And it doesn't mean that everything is all great and all figured out, but sometimes it unlocks the brain, and you're able to, like, just kind of come all the way back down to at least maybe a 4 or a 5. It may not go all the way down, but you can come to a more restful place. And then you're actually able to think more clearly. You're not in survival mode. So you're not like, you don't have the boxing gloves out anymore. And you can your creative brain is back, because we don't need creative brain in survival mode up in that 7, 8, 9, 10 space. We just don't need it. We don't need it when trauma is happening. So where our brain is and where we help it go is super important. It does take practice, though. It takes practice to notice when we're starting to edge up, and it takes practice to know what it is we need. And that's why I call it an antidote. What we need when, and can we catch it quick enough? Now, I'm very familiar with the fact that if we get triggered by something, we can jump from a 3 to a 9 pretty fast. But this is why over time, healing and practicing our responses and knowing what to do when comes into play, because I do think there's some emotional muscle memory, so to speak, where if you use in things that you enjoy, and you might have an aversion to the word play, but something that is enjoyable. Maybe we need to soften it to something that's just enjoyable. If you can do something that's enjoyable when you're stressed and help yourself to kind of come back down that scale and get out of survival mode, the more we do that, the easier it can become. The better we learn how to train our nervous system to turn the alert system off, the better we'll get at it. And maybe it starts to impact how quickly we react. this is, I'm trying to cover quite a few ideas in just a few minutes. So there's lots of caveats and exceptions and things that can go into why we do certain things and how play impacts. And each person has some variation there too. So I don't want to, I am speaking of this in a general way, but I'm also speaking about it in a way that I hope it sparks you to wonder and to be curious with yourself how you play, how you have fun. Do you have moments of silliness even when you're alone? And how can we use that to help in our recovery? I will take a moment to address that there are plenty of people who use play as a way to avoid um, kind of dealing with things. And when it's chronic, it can have a really negative impact on that person and the people they're around. I mean, I think we probably all know someone who laughs at the wrong time or cracks a joke when it doesn't really fit the time. The class clown, for instance, that is always cracking a joke. And it's part of the reason why us therapy people um, have a pretty attentive eye on comedians as a profession, or as a skill, or as a, that's not the word I'm after. um, I just think that comedians have a way of using humor and play, or humor as play, in ways that can be very, very useful. But the comedian themselves often struggle deeply. And Robin Williams might be a good example of that. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that it can be overused just like any attempt to cope with life, and may need to be looked at as well. So we may have difficulties, um, emotional impacts, and traumas that lead us to underplay or maybe overplay. So we just wanted to put a little caveat in there for that as well. So I hope this has stirred something, made you wonder, make you look around your space and think about, how do I utilize play in a better way? I don't know. I'm sure you can see this. This is it's actually a mattress that I folded in half and have it leaning against the wall. And I've created a new kind of meditation space and a sitting space in my office. And I just really liked this pattern. It has orange and purple and teal in it. And those are kind of my colors. It's very bright, but years ago, it wouldn't have occurred to me to create a space like this. I would have had trouble picking things out because I wasn't as connected with myself and my interests and my likes and dislikes as much as I am now. So so even this kind of space to sit and I like to draw and color and that kind of thing. That's on my list of enjoyable things. And so take a look around your space and see what's just naturally enjoyable. You may want to start a list of things that you just find yourself enjoying. I don't mean sit down and think about it and write a list, as like an assignment, but just notice what you enjoy and think about utilizing those when you're having a moment of struggle, and try to help yourself out that way. So I hope you join us in chat, but if not, I hope this is useful, or some of the other resources I've put in here. And I'll talk to you later.